Justin Spaeth, entrepreneur. This is Pain to Profits.
Do it one more time.
Be like, hey, what's up?
Justin.
Act like you want to be here, dude.
Okay.
Justin Spaeth. I'm nervous.
Yeah.
Please don't kill me.
This was the hardest part of the whole thing. Like, what the hell? Hey, Justin Spaeth. Excited to be here. Pain to Profits. Entrepreneurial journey. Is that better?
Just say, hey, what's up?
What's up?
Justin Spaeth, entrepreneur, and this is Pain to Profits.
All right. I'm Justin Spaeth, entrepreneur, and this is Pain to Profits. That was the one.
Yeah.
Okay.
You want to get turned? I heard if you're trying to go climb to the top, I start from the bottom. It's kind of like putting on socks. Yeah, y'all ready or not? Don't let me get hot, though. Clean like a mop. Whole world is shot. This place gon' knock. This place gon' rock. Y'all ready or not? Ready or not? You ready or not? You ready or not? Pay my dues. Punch that clock. You ready or not? You ready or ready or not? You ready or not? You ready or not? You ready or not? Pay my dues. Punch that clock. Ready or not? You ready or
What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Pain to Profits. My name is Samson Jagoras. I'm your host, and on each one of these episodes, we're unpacking the wisdom and knowledge to help you guys save time and level up as you continue to work on gaining more freedom, more money, more relationship, and more purpose. And today, I have my friend, Justin Spaeth. He is an entrepreneur. He's got background in food and beverage and in real estate, and he's doing some land consulting. And he's a man of God, and we know each other because we're in a men's group and a Bible study. You guys will probably start to find a theme here. I bring a lot of those guys onto this podcast because we're doing life together, and it's awesome. But we're just excited to have him here. Thanks for being here, bro, and we just can't wait to unpack your wisdom. So welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks, brother, for having me on. Look forward to it. Appreciate it.
First podcast.
First podcast.
Yeah, you nervous?
No, I'm good. Yeah, pretty excited.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Well, I know you're a competitor, man. I know you compete. You do some triathlons, like long distance, like endurance type stuff.
Yeah.
Are you training for anything right now?
I am. I'm in a off-season triathlon training.
Okay.
So I have a couple on the books for next year, short distance triathlons, and then trying to work into more half Ironman triathlons.
What's off-season training look like?
It's a lighter mix of kind of those endurance exercises, swimming, running, biking, but I like to throw in CrossFit. So that's when I got back into fitness 5 or 6 years ago. Had a little gap, little hiatus, but 5 or 6 years ago, got into CrossFit and really kind of pulled back my love for competition, my love for sport and exercise. And so I really need to CrossFit 2 days a week, get those weights in, and then work in longer runs, longer rides, and then swimming, which has always been humbling for me.
Dude, I can attest to that. I was a pretty good swimmer growing up, but my daughter is phenomenal. You saw her out there. She's tall and lanky, and
Good for her.
yeah, I know. But she's been wanting to swim because it's off season for her. So we've been going to the rec.
Yep.
Oh my gosh, dude, I'm getting crushed.
She beat you. Yeah.
I took off. I'm thinking I'm just smoking it, and I look back, and she's just right behind me like a lockstep. So I'm like, yeah, you just go ahead. Daddy's got to fix his goggles,
Yep.
I'm just getting smoked. Have you always been an endurance athlete?
I started running trail marathons and trail races a few years ago, and have always really appreciated what running does for me mentally, and then appreciated what the ultra community is all about. And so I haven't actually run an ultra marathon yet, which is anything over a standard distance marathon. I've done some long trail marathon things that were pretty intense. But when you go through that long endurance process, just the ups and downs that you experience and the need to just go one step further. And every time you're in that bottom, you know that you're going to come back out of it. And so I've always liked that as a comparative to life, that you're sometimes you're feeling great. Sometimes you're in those lows, but you're always going to come back out. And you go through those cycles, a lot of those cycles through like an endurance run.
Yeah, when you're running an ultra or something like that, a 50K. I mean, geez Louise. Well, that's a good transition too for business. Business can feel that way at times. You're crushing it, you're on top, and then something sideswipes you. The economy corrects a COVID incident or something like that, So
Right.
How do you prepare for those types of situations in the middle of an ultra marathon? And I'm going to see if we can try to impart some wisdom that we can carry over into running a business. But how do you prepare for the suck? How do you train for that?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, business always, I mean, startup or entrepreneurship or business is always a roller coaster,
Yeah.
right? I mean, some days it's, top of the world. Everything is going right. Tomorrow is going to be fantastic. And then you come in tomorrow and something hits you in the face. You're like, you didn't expect it. You just have to react to it. So I think, all of that training, if you look at like holistic life, like exercise and business and just doing those hard things prepares you for more hard things. So I think that's how you train for it. It's not the first time you felt it. And so you know how to work through the process, you know how to overcome it and get to the next stage. And so I think, exercise and sports really complement that well because if you're dying and you're hurting, you've calloused yourself to get through that hard moment to get into the next good moment.
Yeah, I call it intentional suffering.
Yeah.
And we don't do enough, at least societally, we don't do enough of that. Like people think things are hard. And if everything is if you've never experienced hard or intentionally suffered, then everything feels like a level 10 emergency, right? But you do a set of 10 by 10 on squats or a CrossFit workout like a Fran for time, and you feel that lung burn, that edge of what feels like death at the moment, you realize that everything is all about perspective.
Right.
You're going to make it. You're going to be okay. You're not going to die. And, I know a few guys that are Navy SEALs, and they get into this mindset when they're doing these deep dives or these crazy, they got to carry weights and float in the water and stuff like that, where they're just like, they're not going to let me die. I might get really close, but odds are they're going to revive me. Now, some people do die, but when you compare it to that, you think about it, it's like, this is not life or death, right? Like you're going to be okay. Everything's just a little bit rosier and easier. So that's what I love about training for sure. And
people have gotten too used to being comfortable in everything, right?
100%.
Temperature and just general life. They want to be comfortable all the time, and that's not really good for you.
It's not good for you. And if that's you and you're listening to this and you're thinking about being an entrepreneur, you better go work on that muscle first before you even consider being in business, because it is a whole world of emotions that you're probably not prepared for yet. If, getting up early or jumping in cold water or training and taking care of your body or whatever is hard for you as it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's talk about your businesses. What do you got going on? You got a few things. You got Upcycle. You got 4 Pillar Capital. You're doing some consulting.
Yeah.
Let's start with Upcycle.
Okay.
What is that business and how did you get into that?
Yeah. So Upcycle is a service company that services food and beverage manufacturers. So we provide an environmental economical solution for them on all of their waste streams.
Okay.
And so like the large scale chicken producers, prepared foods, they all generate a disposal product that gets hauled away, and they have to pay a tip fee and a land disposal charge. We come in, our patent pending process treats that material, so saves them a ton of money every year. And then the byproducts that come out of it get sold back onto the market. And
for what use?
Into biofuels, so we get a premium oil, and then also a protein compound. So it's biofuels, animal feed, large animal feed primarily, fertilizer markets. And so that's why we recently rebranded to Upcycle within the last 12 months. And Upcycle is taking that waste stream and then upcycling it into a brand new product. Whereas like recycling, if you take an aluminum can, you melt it down, it turns into another aluminum can. Right. And so we're actually going a step further.
That's amazing. So how the heck did you get into that business?
Great question. It was about 2007. I was with a group and we started up a disposal facility in eastern Utah to service the oil and gas markets. And in oil and gas production, all the wells produce flowback and produced water that needs to be hauled away and disposed of. At the time, all of the Grand Junction, which is the Piceance Basin market, all of the water that was being generated in that area was hauled down to Aztec, New Mexico. And so you're talking 10 hours of trucking plus disposal fees. And so we built a facility in eastern Utah to handle all of that waste stream, and the business just exploded. We unloaded 400 trucks a day in periods of high growth.
So just for clarity's sake, like a transfer station? Like they were dropping it there and then you guys were then hauling it off?
No, we were the in-source.
So when they would drop it off there, what would you guys do with it?
Yeah, so we built an evaporation pond facility. And so they would drop it off in tanks, and we would actually, through gravity separation, recover some crude oil, and that crude oil would get sold back onto the market. The treated water after our tank system would go into large lined evaporation ponds. And so we ultimately ended up building 26 5-acre, 20-foot deep evaporation ponds.
Wow.
In eastern Utah with a super high evaporation coefficient, like 60 inches a year. And
Is that just because the lack of humidity and it's arid and it's altitude and all that stuff?
Yep. Yeah. Okay. Dry climate, lots of sunlight. And then as that water evaporates, it goes back into the hydraulic cycle. Whereas like a disposal well, they inject that material back into the ground, back into an already brackish aquifer, and it's just gone forever. Yeah. So if you put it in a pond, it can at least evaporate, re-enter the system.
Cool.
And so it was really through all of that experience in the oil and gas industry, even though we are putting the water back into the system, we knew that it wasn't a long-term play, right? You need to be able to treat it. You need to send it back. And so it kind of started the R&D phase of, hey, let's treat these waste streams, figure out how to make another product, figure out how to not waste our resources. And over a multitude of years, it morphed into being able to take similar technology into food and beverage, which was really just trying to find a industry that had more stability. Oil and gas has always been volatile.
You're like the third oil and gas
guys
that I've had on there. They all say the same thing. Yeah. You're just at the whim of the market, and it's a global thing. So sometimes it's just completely out of your hands.
Yeah, feast or famine. Yeah, I mean, it really is.
So then you found a use case for it, and then how did you go take that to the market? How do you go like, hey, we got this thing for oil and gas, and now I know you do chickens, but we're gonna help you save your waste there.
Right.
How do you do that? How do you make that transition?
Yeah, it was through some technology partners, and we had the opportunity to do a pilot for probably the largest chicken producer in the U.S. Wow. So we did a pilot with them in Clarksville, Arkansas, which was a monumental step for a small startup out of Colorado to bring equipment to this major player and actually show them what we could do.
Is that like Tyson?
It is Tyson.
Okay, yeah, because you said Arkansas, so I'm pretty sure that was where their headquarters are.
Yeah, they're the giant.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's huge, really, and it spurred everything that this company has turned into. So success there rolled into a year of contract work, into a year of site selection, into a few years of building an actual permanent facility at one of their largest plants.
Wow.
Which is a chicken processing facility.
So real quick, just for the timeline. So 2007, you guys start taking frack water, basically separating it and doing all that. How long are you guys running that for?
Yeah, we sold that business in 2012.
2012.
Yeah.
And then from there moved into the chicken business?
Yeah, moved into the chicken business a couple of years later.
Okay, so you sold it, had a few years of R&D, getting everything dialed, getting that contract negotiated. And then how long does it take you to get through the very first sample test run with the pilot with Tyson?
Yeah, so the pilot with Tyson was December of 2015.
Okay.
And then we turned the permanent facility on in 2018. So after a long contract period and a long construction period.
Yeah.
Turned it on in 2018, started running, generating saleable commodities. And it's been an R&D road for a couple of years after 2018. So it's probably stabilized 2020, 2019, 2020, kind of stabilized. The process was finished as far as the R&D cycle. Yep. And then really have just been focused on growing that business concept to other operators,
I just point this out. I like breaking down the timeline because it gives people like a realistic perspective that they grossly overestimate what they can get done in a year. And then they want to go too fast, right? Accuracy before speed, like that one contract and getting everything dialed in, and just working with them to basically fund all of that R&D research effectively is now going to allow you to go very fast and scale the business pretty quickly. So, do you guys have other prospects in other states that you're working with right now?
Yes. Yeah, we've got a facility under construction right now in Indiana. So that site will start up in January, likely.
Sweet.
We have another facility in South Carolina where equipment's being ordered, and a facility in Arkansas where equipment's being ordered. We, take you back to the energy facility that we talked about earlier.
Yep.
That was like a central gathering concept, right? We're servicing lots of operators to bring their waste stream into us. We're taking that same model into this upcycle business. And so the South Carolina site and the Arkansas site, they'll service 30 poultry producers instead of just one. Whereas like the Tyson plant, it's on location just at Tyson, on their property. And so this allows us to scale even faster, rather than deploying capital and operating at 30 sites. We're going to deploy, one site worth of capital and handle 30 customers. And so that's an exciting transition that should come online next year.
Dude, that's freaking exciting. That's amazing. And getting into the fracking and all this and that business, how did you get into that? How did you start there?
Yeah.
Is it for some reason I feel like we talked about it somehow related to the family? You guys,
it is
family business.
Yeah. So I went to undergrad at UNC, sports science major.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And then
great at physiology.
Yeah. And so as soon as you're done with that, you go into oil and gas, right?
I go into commodities.
Yeah.
Exactly. So.
Yeah. So very similar. I had a couple of startup business concepts like between those periods of time.
But we got to stop there. What were those?
So the biggest one that I wanted to start was a golf training facility, because it was right in that period of time where golf simulators were becoming popular.
Yep.
And so there was a Canadian company that had the best on the market. And so I went up to Canada and looked at the units, and that was my idea. I wanted to bring that exercise science in, golf specific, have simulators, a training facility just for that.
Yeah.
It was a good idea. It was just green, young, and probably couldn't connect all those pieces.
Yeah. The math on that feels like
yeah.
There's actually a gym now in Fort Collins called Club 10.
Okay.
Club 10, 1024. I don't know why 1024, but anyways, they have golf simulators in there, and then they have like nice gym equipment, and their whole target audience is golfers.
Yeah.
So kind of,
you're kind of capping yourself a little bit.
I got my own opinions, but yeah. Okay. So you
Yeah.
do that. And then what was the second idea? You said you had
I've always been like business idea, side hustle. I don't know. There was definitely more than one,
but that was the big one.
Yeah, that was the big one.
And then you end up getting pulled into oil and gas because you're like, okay, I got to figure out how to make some money here.
Yeah. So my father-in-law is a world-renowned equine veterinarian and rancher, and so him and some of his business partners had the ranch property that this disposal facility was located on. And they, it was a brand new concept. They'd never been in that space. They just saw a need and wanted to fill it. I was a recently graduated college student, not married to my wife yet. We were just dating at the time, and pitched to them that, hey, you need a project manager for this. You need somebody to learn about the industry, somebody to oversee construction, kind of be your man on the ground. Presented that and
adding value.
Yeah, exactly.
And they gave you that role, and then it just evolved. So what's your official title now within the company?
Within this new company?
Within, Upcycle.
Yeah, different. We leveraged our experience a lot, different ownership.
Okay,
today, like operating, I'm the chief operating officer. And so within the oil and gas process and businesses that we built, when we sold it, I actually worked for the private equity backed group for a while.
Got it.
And so I was regional manager over all of our Rockies assets. And so my background, like physically, is heavy operations, processes, systems. And so today I'm the COO. I
want to point this out because essentially what you did was like earned equity inside of a company, you were the operator. And I think we were talking about this before the podcast, but when private equity comes in, they don't know how to operate that. They just see the financial model. And so somebody has to come in and operate it until you can find an operator to replace you, whatever that may be.
Right.
But that's one of the ways that you can do it, guys. That's one of the ways that you can make the transition is you don't necessarily have to go start your own company. You can leverage your talents and skills to consult for equity inside of a business and or buy a business or, whatever it may be. And then long game that grows into, you can go be a chief operating officer of a company that you own.
Right.
Or in a lion's share of or a majority of.
Yeah.
So that's amazing.
Exactly. Yeah.
So then along the way, you've been doing real estate as well, right? Which is what 4 Pillar Capital is all about.
Yeah. 4 Pillar Capital.
And you guys are doing storage facilities specifically, right?
Any assets that make sense.
Yeah.
So wouldn't limit. Yeah. Opportunistic. Storage facilities, commercial real estate. That would also be my holding company for any businesses acquired.
Yep.
Which is, I look at a broad range of businesses.
Yep.
4 Pillar is actually faith, family, fitness, and financial freedom.
Let's go. I love
that was the basis for the brand. So it's probably the newest formal company kind of within my focus. Just over the last couple of years, put that together.
And you guys have how many storage facilities? I think you got one in the pipeline that you're developing, one that's already operating. Is there another one? Maybe one more?
No, there's one that's operating that has development. So the expansion will triple its footprint.
Wow.
There's another one that just we look at a lot of deals, but you have to pass on some deals too.
If you're doing it right, yeah.
Yeah. So I have some commercial, some multi-tenant commercial industrial stuff in the pipeline.
Sweet.
But yeah.
And then do you have any other operating businesses that aren't like real estate related within the portfolio?
So we still do a little bit in the equine space.
Okay.
So we had a equine breeding and raising program where we would buy thoroughbred mares and then sell the yearlings and weanlings the next year. Kind of wound that business down a little bit. We had some good success. Raised a grade 1 winning filly a couple of years ago. And so they actually sent us over to the Breeders' Cup, which was pretty fun. Flew us out there.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So that business is kind of on the down end for us personally. It gets hard to play in that kind of middle market. It's it's either bottom or top.
Right.
So lots of capital and cash in that business.
And it's not very scalable business unless you have the money into it. It's
right.
You're hoping and praying that you're going to have the right horse that's going to, make you the money that you need to really scale up, or you got to go get a big investor or something like that to bring it to life.
Yeah, exactly. Other than that, I do some consulting for landowners to help them navigate the conservation easement process. I'm not sure if you're familiar with conservation easements at all.
A little bit, but why don't you talk about it a little bit? What's that entail?
Yeah, so a landowner, say a ranch owner, can donate their property to a land trust. So say Cattlemen's Colorado Agricultural Land Trust or Great Outdoors or Division of Wildlife. If they donate that property, they can receive a tax credit, which can then be monetized. But it's a long and complicated process. And so I just help landowners kind of navigate all those steps. And then they, at the end of the day, they get to conserve and preserve their family's heritage ranch, do what they want to do, utilize some of those proceeds for working capital to reinvest. And so it's kind of twofold. It's probably a passion project, but then also there are some rewards for helping people get across the finish line.
Oh, yeah.
But if you look at like a lot of our western, the western part of the state, like preserving those areas from development is critical for hunting and fishing, wildlife, as well as to keep those family agricultural operations intact.
Yeah, 100%. And those build great relationships for other opportunities where you might want to buy deals or put deals together or whatever that may be. For the real estate deals that you're buying, are you primarily leveraging your own capital or are you raising money? What does that look like?
Just internal capital.
Yeah.
So I've never, on the real estate side, never gone out and done any capital raising.
No, I just asked that because I think sometimes my personal thesis is having a business is a much more lucrative way and scalable way to generate vertical capital that can then be deployed into stable cash producing assets. Mm-hmm. That's how I think about it. But I think there is this sentiment right now that people think that they're just going to jump headfirst into the real estate business and go build their wealth that way. Like syndication's super huge. We syndicate deals, but it's ultimately not that lucrative until you really get the propulsion of capital and you get enough deals going over, call it 5 to 10 years or something like that, or you're earlier in the cycle. So like I'm personally focused on building my businesses up to create more assets, but also income that can then be deployed on the personal finance side to offset, I never know what's going to happen to that business. I don't know what's going to happen in the real estate business or in the fitness space in the future, but I do know that real estate's going to be there forever.
Right.
So it's a way for me. It's a store of value for me, for lack of a better term. So
increasing your active income so that you can utilize it to build passive income.
100%. Yeah. With the end game being, right, replace your active income with 100% passive income. Right. So that's awesome.
Real estate's kind of a get rich slowly, get rich long term.
Yep.
But you have to have a funnel of capital to feed into that.
Yeah, 100%. Hey, quick pause. I'm gonna have you push your mic back just a touch, because when you lean, you're so tall. When you lean over it, it like cuts out. Note that on the timeline. Okay, got it. Awesome. So obviously you got 4-pillar, you got Upcycle. What's the 10-year vision for you? 10 years from now, we're sitting down having a conversation, and you're like, "This was the plan the whole time. I got it figured out." What's the end game?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's like I'm a big goal focused person, pretty tactical about my day and about 1 year, 3 year, 10-year goals. With Upcycle, our plan for that company is a liquidation event. Have an asset to sell to somebody else to carry it to that next step.
Yep.
So within 10 years, hopefully earlier than 10 years, we experience that point in time.
Yep.
Utilize a lot of that capital to do what we just talked about is grow more of the passive, less intensely focused asset building, whether it's real estate or bolt-on businesses. I do really like boring businesses in niche segments, things that aren't sexy get undervalued.
Oh yeah.
They get underappreciated, but there's a plethora of cash flow opportunities for those.
What would be a boring business that you kind of like?
Storage used to be that.
Yeah. Now
it's not
every
anymore.
private equity and their mom is going after storage.
Right. I've looked at the FedEx route businesses. I think that those are easily bolt-on businesses. They're pretty boring. I think general service businesses get kind of overlooked because they're boring.
Like services like HVAC or something like that, or even more general.
Yeah, even more general. I don't know if I love the businesses that require a lot of technical expertise, honestly. I don't know if I'd buy an HVAC business.
Yeah.
But standard services where you don't have any employee bottlenecks. You got to have good people to be able to run things. So that's probably pretty broad and nondescriptive.
No, it's good. I'm currently in the process of really pinning down my core thesis for buying businesses. Mm-hmm. And I really like the blue collar industry because everybody's like tech and yada, yada, yada. And my response to that is, when Elon's heater goes out, like it doesn't matter how much money that guy has, he's calling an HVAC guy.
Yeah.
So
good point.
So there's something to be said about that. There's definitely a lack of skills in that area. So I would say that it's harder to maybe find talent, but I also think that's just a brain block because the way that they've been attracting talent in that industry for so long is very old school, right? Mm-hmm. They don't think about attracting talent like I do, which is talent's just like a lead, and the lead, 90% of the research process is done before they ever pick up the phone. So I'm trying to figure out how do I tell the story so they understand what it's like to work here and what it's like to build a life here and leave that company and come work for me because the pay's better and the benefits are better and the culture's better.
Yeah.
Nobody's telling that story. You can go to any HVAC company right now, any contracting company right now, and the story on what it's like to actually work there, where you're going to spend maybe 20 years of your life, is just complete garbage. So I feel, being a marketer with good perspective who understands how to build brand, that I can win, even though I don't know shit from balloons about how to fix a heater, right? You know what I mean? So, but it's all about, understanding what your competitive advantage is and where you can fit into the market. So that's just my thought process. But I'm just asking you because I'm trying to figure out what mine is. Right. Not that I actually know. So
yeah, I think you have to look at a lot to find the right stuff.
Yeah, and for us, it's been finding good portfolio entrepreneurs who we feel have the skill set to manage those companies within the ecosystem or run it, because I can't run them all, right? I might be able to run one or two, but if we want to have $100 million, private equity portfolio of companies, like that's going to require a lot of great people to do that. You know what I mean? So that's ultimately what our end game is. So
it has to be scalable.
Yes,
which eliminates a lot of things if you start peeling back the layers.
Oh man, 100%. What's your definition of scalable? Because I feel like that term gets thrown around a lot. Yeah. I have my own definition of it, but I'd just be interested to know what you think when you say scalable.
I mean, you don't hit a peak. Like, okay, so we buy an HVAC company, and it's based in Windsor, Colorado. I mean, at some point, Windsor continues to grow, right? And so you've got some revenue growth there, but at some point it's hard to get that business from Windsor into Colorado Springs, into Dallas, Texas, into Florida.
Right.
I want it to be scalable where you can take it anywhere you want, continue to grow it, not be geographically limited.
But I mean, that's the power of franchising. Or like what CrossFit did with the business opportunity. Holy cow, they hacked the system on that one. Granted, you lose a lot of quality control, and the CrossFit brand got pretty damaged, I think, as a byproduct of just letting anybody who could take a weekend course and pay $5,000 can open a gym. But that's
here's your one.
Besides the point, So it's just interesting to pick your brain and see how you think about it. Because scale to me is really just being able to leverage technology, process, and maybe people in an attempt to keep my expenses as fixed as possible while my revenue grows. Mm-hmm. Where growth is my revenue and my expenses are climbing at the same rate, so my margin never effectively gets better, right? But scale can also mean more work to do. Scale can also mean, is this a blueprint that we can take and span across another city or state or whatever that may be?
Yeah,
which has its own set of challenges too, because even the way that real estate's done in Colorado versus the way it's done in Arizona can be very different.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So where's your family fit into this whole equation? Behind every great entrepreneur is an even stronger woman.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that for a little bit. What's your wife's thought on like owning a business and being an entrepreneur? Because I know for me, that wasn't as I wanted to I'm a build a parachute on the way down, or at least I used to be kind of guy.
Okay.
Is she on board with the whole entrepreneurship, just jump in and go do it, or is she seek a little bit more security?
Yeah, great question. I think, first and foremost, like behind every financial or economic goal that I set, my biggest why is always my family. Yeah. So at the end of the day, if what I'm doing doesn't benefit my family or doesn't bring me closer to my family, then it's, the purpose is lost, so the family is the why. My wife is amazingly strong and supportive in anything that we do, and she always has been. She grew up in an entrepreneurial household, so that helps a lot. But she's a strong lady who's a hard charger and ambitious herself, who's very supportive of our family and in the growth. She can see kind of where we're going. She supports those goals. But then she also has a professional career on her own. She's recently promoted to the director of individualized education at RCS. And so she is going to build a legacy program at that school district to service both sides of the equation, gifted and talented and special needs, and really build that program there. So she's disciplined and driven in her own way as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I asked that question too, because I think sometimes as entrepreneurs we can be really hard charging and forget that our wives didn't necessarily sign up for this. So making sure you're on the same page is so vital. One of the things that Casey and I do is once a year, fourth quarter, typically we'll sit down and we'll cast like, what's our 10-year vision? What do we got to get done in the next 3 years? Very much like how a business would operate, you know? What's our lifetime checklist of things that we want to get done? How much money do we want to give away? And we've been, especially as of late, getting really clear on like, what is that, you know, because in about 10 years, our girls are going to be out of the house, you know? So our game plan is to make sure when they're out that we can, no matter where they go, be there and continue to have that relationship. Because obviously we want them to have their own and fly the coop and do all that, but I don't want to miss that time. You know, I definitely felt like there were times when my parents personally were financially limited in their ability to come and visit or see me. And it made us grow apart quite a bit. So I don't ever want to be limited by that. But
Right.
I think if you're just listening to this and you're aspiring to make that transition as an entrepreneur, and it's definitely important to make sure your wife and you guys are on the same page and you have the same shared vision, because at some point it'll cause a conflict if it doesn't. Or some people, in some cases, it makes them grow apart, you know, because they're just not supporting each other or whatever that may be.
Yeah.
So
I think you see that a lot in like in health and fitness too. You know, like one spouse wants to focus on eating right, and the other spouse does not, and it causes big problems.
Dude, that is such a great point.
You're absolutely right.
I mean, owning a gym, we got 16 trainers, and that is a huge conversation. Sometimes people come in, you know, they're very overweight, call it 300 pounds. They should probably be like closer to like 150 pounds. And the very first question is, where's your spouse at on this? Are they coming in to train?
They've got to support them.
Are they going to be here? Are they doing it? Are they eating healthy? Because if not, this shit is not going to work out long term. And inevitably, and all the times when we've neglected to do that, there's this pull, you know, where they're pulled out and all of a sudden conveniently they stop showing up or whatever it may be. Yeah. Or they're, you know,
they get judged by their spouse and ragged on by their spouse. So.
Yeah. Which is the craziest. Misery loves that is the definition of misery loves company.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Can't be having you looking too hot now. Justin.
Right. Yeah.
That's awesome. How about your kids? Raising entrepreneurial kids. My wife and I are on a kick on that, making sure our kids understand money and finance and how to make money. But do you guys do that with your kids?
We do. And it's fun. It's fun teaching them that and letting them experience it. And, you know, then you see their creative ideas get brought forward. And I think it's because of those conversations. Yeah. So we definitely, try to implement in that into our kids' lives.
Yeah. And how old are they?
12 and 10. Okay. So our son is 12, and then a daughter is 10.
And do they, like, when you guys talk about like the real estate that you guys own, do they feel like they're a part of that business, like the family business? Or is it like, no, that's mom and dad's business and we got our own little thing over here?
No, that's a great question. I think that they feel like they're part of it.
Yeah.
My daughter, especially, she likes going to the storage facility and playing storage, right? You know, playing that person that's helping people out.
Yeah. Somebody rings the bell and she walks up to the front. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. She loves that.
That's amazing.
And she's started thinking about investments in businesses. The other day, actually, she was talking with my wife and talking about where she wanted to try to go to college. And, you know, if she went someplace warm, you know, maybe we could buy a house and rent it out. And then that, you know, so
house hacking.
Yeah, house hacking. She's already thinking about house hacking.
I love it.
As a 10-year-old.
That's amazing.
And so it comes pretty natural to her, or has been growing.
Did you have those conversations as a kid with your family growing up?
You know, so we grew up in a blue collar, small town.
Yeah.
My dad was a HVAC mechanic, service mechanic.
Okay. Which might be your apprehension.
Maybe. Yeah. He was a heck of a hard worker, though. Yeah. I mean, he instilled lots of work ethic into us. And, you know, if you look at like side hustles, he was probably pretty instrumental in my desire to always have another side hustle. Yeah. Even growing up, like he'd help us collect aluminum cans, and then we'd take them to the salvage yard and, you know, get money for it. Yeah. Or, you know, raise animals to sell to our neighbors. And so there was always a hack of make a little extra money. And he was never able to really scale and step out of the blue collar. He did start a business, but he was self-employed by himself.
Yeah.
And so he was really technician focused, but drew lots of good values in us.
Yeah. My dad was the same way. You know, my dad been rocking on his own since he was 13, and lied about his age and to get a job and all that. That's how he got into carpentry and cabinetry and all that stuff. But he too had a business a couple times and just never quite was able to break out of that into the next phase. What do you think are the things that keep them from and kept your dad from kind of making that transition to being like an actual business owner?
Yeah. I think for my dad, it's probably the people side, just afraid to hire people who wouldn't do the same quality of job that he could do, you know? And so
he's
like
a craftsman.
Yeah, he's a craftsman. He's a technician. He knows how to do it the best. Right. And so I don't think he ever had any desire to hire anybody. Like that sounds like terrible brain damage.
Yeah.
To him or to that mindset.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think for my dad, I just think that he loved to get his hands on it. Nobody could do it as good as him. But I just think that he didn't know how to orchestrate the business or the finances of the business in order to make that make sense, right? Like because he wasn't a sales guy, he didn't understand how to incent a salesperson to be selling jobs on a commission schedule, which really doesn't cost them much out of pocket, right? To be able to get ahead of all the jobs because it was just railroad track thinking. Like this job's done. Oh crap, what do I got to do next? You know?
Right.
And so I wish, had I been older, that I could have been able to help him make that transition. But it's funny now that I'd always told myself, like, I don't ever want to be in that business. But then I look at the numbers and I understand how to like manage people and process and systems. I'm like, if you can figure it out and you can run a high level successful contracting company, there's a ton of money in that industry. Yeah. So that's probably why I'm intimately familiar with how that business works, even though I haven't done the work. Don't ask me to swing hammers. It's like, it'll piss me off. I freaking hate it. When I was a kid, I was like, I just want to go skateboard. I do not want to come help you in the shop. Have fun. I'm going to go work on kickflips, you know? Right. He was like, all right, see you later, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's interesting. Okay. Awesome, man. Well, what do you got to get done in the next, say, 3 years from where you're at right now to be on pace for that 10-year goal of being able to move completely into that investor role? And just have businesses and assets that you oversee or you're on the board for, you know, whatever that might be.
Yeah. So on the upcycle front, you know, we need to continue to perform on these new projects. So we're scaling and growing right now, you know, so that's a capital scale. That's a human resource scale. It's figuring out how to not be limited by supply chain issues, you know, like doing projects on the tail end of COVID has been tough.
Right.
You order a piece of equipment, it takes 8 months to get there. You know, that doesn't work. So really it's taking it from, you know, one site to multiple sites, streamlining the startup phase, streamlining the into operations, and then putting the right people in the right place.
Yeah.
I think we've got a pretty good executive team, you know, org chart, if you will, at the top today. So we just need to build it out a little further and continue to provide that value to, you know, to our customers. So that, you know, short term, next couple of years, we'll bring multiple facilities online within that business.
How many employees do you think you're going to need to bring on to facilitate that?
You know, it's pretty efficient. We're 5 to 7 employees per site.
Oh, wow.
As far as boots on the ground. And then you've got back end support requirements as well. So, you know, our accounting team needs to grow a little bit and get some more help on the human resource sourcing side of things.
Yeah.
But it's all very achievable.
What type of role or function kind of boots on the ground operates day to day? What does that look like? Is facility operator, is that what you would call it? Or
Yeah. Facility manager and then facility operator. So there'll be one manager and then one kind of secondary lead, you know, team lead, and then just shift operators from there. Okay. So they come in and, you know, we run like at our Tyson plant and at this other plant in Indiana, we'll run 3 shifts throughout the day and there'll be 1 shift off.
Got it.
But ultimately we're there to service the food manufacturer. You know, so if they're processing, we have to be processing as well. Because you can't disrupt, you know, what they're doing on that end. That's a non-starter.
Yeah. That makes sense. And then what about what do you got to do on the 4-pillar side to be on pace in the next 3 years for your 10-year target?
Yeah, 4-pillar. 4-pillar is probably still is always in a vision sort of recreation mode, like trying to figure out. I look at a lot of opportunities. It's very opportunistic focused.
Yep.
Continue to bolt on assets, which helps from a tax standpoint, deployment of capital. And so that's really my focus. And then I like buying value add properties too that have expansion capability. And so the fun thing about commercial real estate is it's all valued on cap rate, as you know.
Yep.
And so when you come in, you buy something, you can tweak some levers, increase that cap rate, increase the value, use that value creation to expand it,
right.
And then further increase the value. And
Yeah,
so that's
buy, add the value, refinance, redeploy the capital into the property, do it over again.
do it over again.
Yeah. Not everybody's commercial real estate proficient who's listening, so that's the summary. Those are the cliff notes, guys.
Yeah.
We got our friend Brandon
Okay.
Greeby came on here, and like we got down the rabbit hole talking about cap rates and debt, and I like looked back, picked my head up, and was like, "Wow, we went way too deep on that stuff." So
Yeah.
and I didn't do a good job of actually like unpacking that. So
Yeah, you need to put a disclaimer before listening to this podcast. Read this book.
drink coffee.
Yeah.
It's gonna get boring.
Yeah. Brandon's sharp.
Yeah, he's super sure. He's killing it as well.
Awesome.
Yeah, when it comes to storage, I mean, I don't think anybody's done more storage than that guy.
He's done well.
Yeah, he's doing like 9 transactions a year in the storage space.
Yeah.
He's killing it.
Pretty impressive.
Yeah, he's an impressive dude. Well, what are some of the biggest roadblocks you're up against right now? Obviously, you mentioned that you have some supply chain issues, which I think everybody who's building any kind of infrastructure is going through. But what else are you guys troubled with? And maybe we can riff on that and talk about maybe some ideas on how to move forward from it.
Yeah, the timely, appropriate growth of human resources is probably always sort of a burden. You're hiring people. In some cases, you're hiring people, making an investment in them until they're really ready to fulfill that role.
Right.
Whereas like needing people desperately and not being able to find them. So that sort of the timing balance of human resource and just growing that team is always a little challenging, I think.
Yeah.
Because the last thing you need is a monster payroll.
Yep.
When the business isn't ready to support it. But if the business needs them, you got to have them.
How long does it take to get somebody trained up to operate?
Yeah, it's a couple of weeks, maybe a little longer. We'll use our North Carolina facility as like a training ground.
Okay.
So actually send some employees there, let them learn the ropes. And so that's really helpful.
Yeah, that's great.
These other sites will be a little more complicated, but the more that we can cookie cutter and standardize our process, the easier it is to implement, the easier it is to go through training and bring those sites online.
Yeah, things to think about, because I was at one point responsible for hiring 150 people a year. And so I know the pain points that come along with that. Things that I didn't know when I got into that was for every 10 months that somebody stays in the same role, they're about 10% more likely to churn out. So if they came on and they were, 80% on board, in 10 months, they'll be 70% on board.
Okay.
And so it's just thinking about like upward mobility. What's the path of growth for those people, even if it's just slight? And it's not always about compensation. Sometimes it's about professional development. So those are things we didn't think about.
Okay.
Our onboarding and training program wasn't as tight as it could be. Sounds like you guys have a little bit better training ground for that. But it was a lot of like, we needed to get better at documenting and processing and coming up with like what we would call our way playbook. Like, this is how we do things. Because when we didn't, it left a lot of esoteric knowledge, meaning trapped in people's heads, so that they would resort to the, hey, Justin, just watch me do it, which is great until all of a sudden that trainer person leaves. Right? And then you're up shit creek without a paddle.
Yeah.
And then as we started to grow at scale, you're just going to have natural churn. So what we would do is we were getting behind the 8 ball and not proactively using the metrics and the data, the predictability of our churn. And so we would always be a day late and $1 short on hiring. So we were waiting until we needed people. But we knew based off of growth and based off of natural churn, new sales, exactly how many people that we needed.
Okay.
Predictable. Like,
So you had that marker.
so, I could tell you that I was going to lose 6 marketing account managers every single quarter. And so I would pre-hire based off of sales and book growth. And then I would get the call like, why are you hiring so many people? And I'm like, give me till Friday with the end of the quarter. Somebody's going to quit. It was just like inevitable.
I know that they will.
Yeah. And so it happened like clockwork. And when we didn't do that, we were always a day late and $1 short. The concern was always our payroll's too heavy. I'm like, well, it's too heavy for like 30 days. And it's not like we just hired 100 people. We hired like an extra 5 people because we knew this churn was going to happen.
Right.
And like clockwork, it would happen. So you can build a financial model that will start to give you that predictability of what you're the question that you're trying to answer. How long does it take us to train up? How many people will we need? What's the timeline to hire? Does it take us 30 days to hire, 90 days to hire? And you can back into all of that stuff and then have a predictable model that'll tell you, which is helpful because when you go to sell the business, then you can plug that in as an equation.
Yeah. Have you found it harder to hire people currently?
I've heard that a bunch. And when I generally ask people what their approach is to hiring people, it's an afterthought.
Okay.
So, for example, if you were trying to source a new customer, how would you go about doing that? Just put a little page on your site and sit on your hands? No, you would proactively come up with a strategy to try to track down, source, inspire, and help them make a decision before they ever got on the phone with you. So we're not treating recruiting like a lead attraction because it's been good. We've been in a quote unquote easy, cheap money. You don't even have to be that good or profitable in order to grow your business, right?
Yeah.
But if you want to see the people that are actually winning and who win out long term, they're building companies with irreplaceable people. They're incredibly good at attracting talent, retaining talent, training talent, getting them to buy into the culture long term so that people don't actually want to leave. Because right now it's just like, oh, well, I can Google or go on LinkedIn right now and I can look up like mid-level remote jobs that make, I don't know, 85 to 100K and find, I think last time I looked, it was like 6,500 opportunities.
Wow.
So that's what you're up against. Yeah. Right. So, you got to understand who your client, your employee is and what are they thinking about? Where are they searching? What are their opportunities? Nobody thinks like that.
Right.
They just hire because they don't think about it. They go and hire some recruiting firm who has some special knowledge when in reality they're doing the same shit. You know what I mean? So, So it's just becoming a talent attraction strategy is what I call it. And nobody thinks like that.
Yeah. So, why do people want to come work for you?
Yeah. And if you know that they're likely to churn out, why do they want to stay? Right. We already know what that looks like. So we should be doing things to circumvent that just like we do for customers.
I think it was the Zappos CEO when they would hire people, bring them through their training process, a couple of weeks. And then he would say, you can either take this job or you cannot take this job and I'll pay you, next month anyways.
Oh, wow.
And 1 out of 5 people would turn it down. And he said, well, that just saves me from having to fire them down the road. Right.
That's genius.
Yeah. Pretty good idea.
I'm going to maybe consider doing that.
Yeah.
That's amazing. All right. Well, we'll wrap it on this, man. I appreciate you. You've been a wealth of knowledge. I never thought I'd be talking about how to upcycle chicken waste. But that's incredible. Let's just say an entrepreneur scrolling on LinkedIn or YouTube or TikTok, I'm watching this right now, and they need some encouragement or motivation to make that transition from being employed to go doing their own thing. What would you tell them?
Yeah. I mean, it is scary. It's a scary step. Worth it for sure. The freedom that it brings in, it allows you the ability to architect your life. I would say go for it. I mean, if that's your passion and that's tugging on you, you got to do it. It'll never go away.
I love that lifestyle design. Well, I appreciate you, dude. If people want to connect with you, follow along with your journey, what are the best social platforms for them to do that on?
I'm on Insta, Justin Spaeth, Colorado. I'm on LinkedIn.
Cool.
Not a heavy social user, but I'm there.
All right. Well, if you ever want to have that conversation about how to build your brand, we got you as well. So
nice.
Cool, man. I appreciate you. I love you, dude. And can't wait to do this again.
All right. Thanks, brother.
Thanks.